And it was crazy at the time. And for the first time ever, I used to love playing RPGs, but I hated reading on the monitor. And so we did things like, we're not going to have any text in Blood Omen. So we had all voice, and we used the new CD-ROM technology. For Eternal Darkness, we took this GameCube that could stream really fast and camera angles, and we started breaking the fourth wall with all these insanity effects. And so there was this time when we were working on these things, and this is kind of a long answer to your question, so I hope that's okay, where I was talking to someone in the press, and they said to me, what you're really doing is really good for the video game industry, and you're creating stories that are just as important as, say, Tolkien. And I thought about that a lot, and I came to the conclusion that it wasn't true. It was a great compliment. I appreciated it. But Tolkien, who created Lord of the Rings, his life work, he was a tenured professor at a university, and he got paid to do a different job, and he worked on that. And I realized as a video game developer, I at most could spend 5 to 7 years on a game, maybe 10 if I'm lucky. And so I could never create something like that. So we started looking at the medium, and we created Apocalypse because we wanted to change the way people thought about story in video games. So a lot of people think apocalypse means the end of the world. Actually, apocalypse means to see something that you thought was not previously possible. So we started with that concept where Lord of the Rings, and how would it ever be possible for me to create something as good as Tolkien? And we came to the conclusion, no, that's not true. However, imagine if you created a game with a medium where you had millions of people contributing to the content. So instead of one person, you had millions, then maybe all those people in totality could create something as large as Lord of the Rings. You have to have millions of people contributing to it. So we started working on technologies like that. And okay, so what does that mean? So if you take, as an example, you will take a game like Diablo. I love Diablo, or any action RPG, any World of Warcraft, doesn't matter. You look at that game, and what they do is they'll create loot on a spreadsheet, and they will do something like, here's our epic set. You grind for a while, and there's this problem of grinding that gamers hate. They hate, they love finding and discovery, but to get that epic piece of loot can be really, really tough. And so we looked at that, and for those who are really into the medium of developing games, all that stuff is based off of casinos. So you kill an enemy, it's like playing a one-armed bandit. You hope you get that 1% epic drop, and you keep doing it till you get all the stuff you want. And we looked at that and said, what can we do differently? So we started looking at quantum mechanics. And I know it's
I feel like that guy in the meme where
it sounds crazy but true. So so everything, if you want to look at the best understood theories of the universe right now, like this podcast that's happening right now, that is a combination of all the things that you have done in your life. Okay. All the podcasts that you've created, all the games you've created, all the things that you've worked on to get to this moment in time, all the things that I've done, Legacy of Kain, Eternal Darkness, podcasts, interviews, that discussion with that press person that talked about Tolkien. If we wanted to find this meeting, it's all of our histories combined. So we started looking at things like that, and we said, what if we created an RPG system that's based on histories? And so imagine you and I are playing this game, and I kill 100 enemies with the sword. I store that history in the weapon, and then I trade the weapon to you. You kill 1,000 enemies and kill a boss. And then you trade that sword to Oscar. And then Oscar kills a god. Now imagine, instead of it being randomly generated for that 1% loot drop, that we have the value of that weapon is defined by your actions. So that's basically it's all deterministic and based off of quantum mechanics. So your history determines the value of the loot, not some random number, not some spreadsheet. And so we were working on this. This was cooking for a while. And we had some pre-seed investors come in. David was one of the pre-seed investors. David Wolf, a great guy. And his family owns the James Bond franchise, and we were lucky enough to connect with them. And as he's very interested in storytelling. He's like, have you ever heard of blockchain? And I was like, no, we know, obviously, Bitcoin and all that stuff. And he started explaining to me, I said, oh, it's like a history ledger.
So I just want to press pause on that for a moment, because that's, I think, the really interesting tie-in to what you were just talking about. And for those who are just joining us, by the way, so thanks. We got a couple hundred people already live on the stream. Awesome to have you here. I think we actually got started a few seconds late on the stream, but it's cool because everyone always misses the first few seconds when we go live anyway. So we're here with the Web3 game development live stream. We're live from GDC here in San Francisco. I've got Denis Dyack, the legend behind Legacy of Kain. You've got how many years of game development?
Over 30, I would say, probably around 35.
So this is really interesting because this is not typical for Web3. Like a lot of Web3 teams are, frankly, a lot of them have not built a game before.
That's right.
So they set an aspiration that's like way above like even what's reasonable for the kind of team that they put together. So you have built a lot of games. You know how to ship a game.
Many games, yes.
And you have a lot of experience specifically in storytelling, but now we're getting to this really interesting idea you have of using blockchain. I'm going to kind of try to hear what you said and feed it back, tell me if I got it right. But you're kind of using blockchain's ability to capture provenance on items, like who are the hands that it passes through to capture the history of these items, capture it on chain as part of the storytelling.
It's part of so you have to think it's all abstracted. So but yes, we're using the theory of history defines and is deterministic of the things that you do. So the things that you do in the game determine the value. So what we like to say is playing is crafting and history is currency. So if you talk about, as an example, you would ask me, what's one of my favorite games? And I'll say EverQuest or World of Warcraft. What I'm going to start talking about are these memories. And what do you remember when you play those games? And I'll talk to you about this one time when I was playing EverQuest and I fell into a hole in that dungeon where I had to get a level 50 cleric rescue me. And I was caring about my gear that was all crap, but to me it was everything. And those memories are what define video games and what gamers care about. And so what we're saying is, why don't we use that fundamental basis to determine the way that the mechanics work? So it's based upon history instead of just random loot tables that we've been doing in video games now for like 25, 30 years, since Diablo, since it first all started with action RPGs. But it goes further than that. That's not all. So now imagine we start looking at the big data and we start looking at AI stacks. And then we start saying, so Oscar's got the sword that you and I used and we traded to him. Imagine now that sword becomes sentient and it starts telling stories of when it was playing with me. So we take this data and now we can start creating stories based upon all the things that we've done. Because as we play, we set this huge database of information. And now we start getting into that question that's going back to Tolkien. So imagine millions of people setting their own things, doing their own things in game and determining the world and where it's at. So now you have millions of players adding to the story, adding to the content. And these technologies, they're not a silver bullet. They all work together to become greater than the sum of its parts. So with Deadhaus Sonata, we have a 10-year story arc plan, which we will do traditionally as people are used to, and they'll come to know the stories that we do. But we will take these AI stacks and these histories and these deterministic ways of creating new things that's totally new, and give people an experience that they never thought possible. And that's where we're going. That's Deadhaus Sonata in a nutshell.
So a lot of people are thinking about generative AI really just to accelerate their production process. Like now I can make art faster or something like that. But
Yeah.
kind of the same game, but more of them faster.
Yeah.
You're thinking about actually using generative AI to craft the storytelling experience.
Part of it as to augment it. And so there's a misnomer. This is my opinion now. And so
that's what we're here for.
My background, believe it or not, my background is in artificial intelligence, and my master's thesis was with neural networks. And the second game that I did, Fantasy Empires, published in 1992, had a running neural network in it with an agent. And that was really early. No one.
92, you said.
1992.
How many neurons?
Oh yeah, very small. No one cared. The game was called Fantasy Empires, and the dungeon master, we called him, would give you hints on where to go. It's a very old game. I think you can get it on Steam now. So there's a misnomer with technology, and a lot of people think that technology is going to save you time. That's actually not true. So the way technology works, and I'll give an example, start with email, and then I'll recommend some books for people to check this out. Email, a lot of people think that technology allows us to communicate more. That's true, sort of, but what really it means is it allows us to communicate in ways that we couldn't previously before, much faster in some sense. So now that we send emails, I can send, like today, saying, hey, you're going to try to go to Starbucks, get a coffee before the podcast, blah, blah, blah. All that happens really fast. Before the days of email, we would write a letter to someone maybe once a year, back before we had typewriters. But now that we have this technology and we can do more, yes, we can communicate faster, but it takes more time. So anytime you get a new technology, and a lot of people think, well, we're going to have all these AI stacks, or we're going to use all this new technology to save us time. It'll actually make you more productive, but inversely proportional, it will also make you take more time and more people. So technology costs more. And the idea of having technology to save time is generally a misnomer, because as technology advances and as we create more and more complex games, it takes more people and more time and more money. So yeah, we always generally stay away from that. So what we're trying to do with this tech is try to enhance the experience to something they haven't seen before, but it's going to take a lot of work. And this game has been cooking for quite a while. And this whole idea of blockchain, and for us, it's going to be abstracted. Whether gamers even know it's in there, it's irrelevant. It's a technology for us to enhance the experience for people. And what's the right way to describe it so there's no confusion? We're an ethical free-to-play game. So you never have to spend money unless you want to. There's no reason. There's never going to be pay to win. And gamers want that experience. What we think we have here is we're creating a mini social media network where, as an example, you're walking by and there's a town crier there, total NPC, just looks at all the big data sets and says, hey, did you know Oscar just killed a god last week? Those are the kind of experiences that we're going to try to enhance, which I think, I guess we follow sort of two golden rules. One is we work for gamers. We must always interact with the community to make sure we're doing the right things. And two, we want to create something we want to play ourselves. And so when you say, how did we fall into Web3? It just happened to be, it's just aligned. And it's, if we do all this right, there's a single login, it's all transparent, no one cares. All they care about is, hey, I got these cool stories that are coming out of the things that I do in the game. And this is an experience I've never seen before. And I'm actually getting true agency into the development and into the world, and when I feel I contribute more than I have in previous other games. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, so I want to double click on the blockchain stuff for a moment and kind of dig into like why blockchain specifically, along with these AI capabilities. But I also want to just invite our guests who are tuning in here. I'll call you guests today instead of the audience because it's early in the morning, actually, is the reason I'm slipping up there. But we got 300 of you in the live audience already. So we'd love to hear from you. You've got Denis Dyack here. He's a very experienced game developer with over 3 decades of experience, a lot of storytelling in there, bringing now storytelling into the world of Web3 gaming. With artificial intelligence and blockchain, we are hitting a lot of technology intersections here. So we always want to hear from you. So this is a live program. The reason we do this live, like we could sit down, we could do YouTube videos, we could record, we could do fancy production stuff. Like we could have done all that stuff, but instead this is a live program because I love the audience interaction. We got a few hundred of you here live. So post your questions. We've got someone here with a lot of experience, and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. So whether it's blockchain, storytelling, legacy of Cain, Web3, it's all fair game. We want to hear from you. And in fact, in addition to posting comments on all these channels that we're on Facebook and YouTube, Twitch, X, probably most of you are coming from X. My X feed has blown up over the last couple of weeks. I think I have over like 250,000 followers here. So thank you, all of you who have decided to follow me and listen to the content that we're putting up here. Love you all. We couldn't do this without you. There wouldn't be a program without you, but participate, post a comment there. Oscar will monitor it. We'll throw those right onto the screen and we can have you participate in the conversation. In addition to that, we can even bring you in live. Okay. So we're here live on video. Oscar's on remote. It's on StreamYard. Oscar can get you a link. Just post a comment. So Oscar, I saw a comment come up here. What do we got? Nope, it's spam. There we go. So that's the other problem of having 250,000 followers on X. We get spam. So that's not a comment that we can talk about. But
nobody told you to be popular.
Yeah. So yeah, we're undergoing a little bit of a bot attack at the same time. But we're not going to post spam comments on the stream, so don't bother with that. But if you have a question about game development, this is the live stream for game developers or anyone who just wants to learn about game development and learn kind of behind the scenes. But let's go back to that question of blockchain stuff.
Sure.
So you've described really super interesting stuff on the artificial intelligence side in terms of like bring the world to life, and Oscar does something in the world and that information is captured and we use some AI to surface sort of the news of the world so that you feel like the impact of your actions on that world, and it's multiplayer. So other people are hearing about what you're doing. So I get like that aspect of leveraging AI in history to create that added engagement with the world.
Correct.
But again, like why blockchain for that? Why wouldn't it just be, like World of Warcraft, for example, could have an item database and track things and use AI to create history.
So yeah, that's an interesting question. And I guess one of the answers is when you look at what do people value in a game, it's your memories. And I think in many cases so far that I've seen, when I look at Web3 and I look at the games that have come before it, they look at economies first, and then they look at, the game second. And one of the first talks I did at GDC back in 1996, after I created Legacy of Cain, was the talk was called Engagement Theory. And engagement theory is based upon one of the biggest psychological experiments in the world by Dr. Csikszentmihalyi, and a couple other people have talked about it. It's the theory of flow. So what do you have to do to get into flow? And getting into flow means it's the perfect aesthetic experience where you start losing track of time. And when we created like Eternal Darkness, we would ask people continuously as we're focused as in what time it was. And when we knew they started losing track of time, that's when we knew we had them. So the idea of that's what makes a good game is to get that experiential flow in the game. What this does, it allows us to capture those memories. So if I think of EverQuest, I think about things in the game where I remember things like Pinky the Bard, where this bard would go around naked and get all the sand giants to troll everyone in the beginning areas back in the day. I never laughed so hard. I would live and die to watch these videos. And sometimes I got caught up in it in myself. And it's those memories. So the idea of, we have two things. We have these AI stacks that are helping It's almost like a little mini social media network. But then the other thing is we're capturing those memories that these are things that you have done in the game. And it's almost like genetic algorithms that are deterministic on saying, what is the value of these weapons? And the things that you do determine it. So it's all your own. And when you look at things like Diablo, there's multiple problems with that. Not only, those casino mechanics and addiction, but every season, what will happen when they create a new epic set of weapons or armor, you're quantitatively easing into the system, and the previous sets of armor become diminished, and you have to grind to get the new best set.
Right.
Well, what we're saying here, imagine that history is layered, and over time, things become more valuable and everything is unique. So what you do, your weapons are unique and they're different than my weapons. And so if you want to buy a famous samurai sword, say from Miyamoto Musashi, the sword saint, the world undefeated in 50 battles to the death, the make of the sword is important, but the history behind it is more important, and who used it and why. And we're saying that is what's valuable. That's what matters to gamers. And that is completely parallel with blockchain technology. And I don't think gamers care at all about blockchain. And for us, we just want to create that experience and putting it in there so it's seamless to gamers, and they know that if they want to trade it to someone and it has value for them, they can. If they want to keep it forever, they can. And it's these kind of options we want to empower gamers. So that's why the technology is like that. When I talk about David Wilson, and we were talking about stories and very much into movies, as I said, he basically, he's had a lot to do with film and television. And when we talk about thesis of storytelling and multiple people contributing, it was just parallel and it just made sense. And, it all started, we went into a game jam with a group called Definity, and they have a blockchain called the ICP. Yep. And then from there, we bumped into a group called Polychain. They saw what we did. We had this all running in the background, so you couldn't even tell it was there. And then they joined our seed. Well, they created our seed round. They said, we want to invest in you. So yeah, so that's how it all happened. So for us, we're game makers, and this technology came along that allowed us to do something we really, couldn't do before, and do it really quickly, and had all these really neat advantages, we thought, which is with all technology, with AI, which, I've been doing for a long time now, or with, blockchain or cloud technology, big data, all of these things together combine into something that's bigger than the sum of their parts.
When we talk about blockchain, I also think about the composable aspects of blockchain. So it's one thing to have all of this data and history, as you put it, captured in the items and things that you have within the game. Is there an opportunity here to surface it external to the game and consume it? Because I'm also thinking things like we talked about MMOs and Diablo and things like that. So a big part of World of Warcraft, for example, is the armory, all the user interface plugins and the things that sort of floated around it.
Of course.
Is that
100%.
Something that you see as an opportunity as well? Talk about that, because I think that doesn't get talked about enough actually in blockchain.
Well, I think one of the, I've, being in the game industry for a while now, and as new technology comes in, like any other industry, there's this immediate resistance to it. Of course, new technologies come out, people do bad things with technologies, and then everyone thinks it's all bad. But a technology is neutral, and it depends how you use it and what opportunities you can. And when it comes to actually, we look at it as it gives people ownership in ways that they previously have never seen before. And thank you so much.
Getting our real-time coffee.
Yes.
You see, this is live TV, folks, with live coffee at the same time. And did I mention, by the way, we've got 400 people in the live audience. Oscar, this might be our biggest live audience so far.
And we're only halfway there. So yeah, it could be a big audience.
We usually double by the end. So this could be way bigger. So the weird thing though is we've got all of you here. I think you're so wrapped with the storytelling from Denis here, talking about what he's doing, that you're gripped by that, but we want you to also add comments and ask a question. Because if you ask a question, hey, it makes my life a little bit easier, but actually it's not about that. It's about you being part of this, because the whole idea of the live streams I'm doing is it's not really me always talking with these leaders in the industry that I bring on. It's allowing you to come in and be part of that conversation. So we like to think of this as, you know, a conversation first and foremost, where you're part of it. Yeah. And we're not going to post your spam on the live stream. So, you know, don't bother with that.
The technology, you know, the famous Marcus Aurelius saying, "What you do in life echoes in eternity." So
we're getting deep now.
Yes.
We're getting into stoicism.
Yes, exactly. And when you think about what people care about, it's those memories. And so a lot of we've got many patents pending, all this kind of stuff. The actual technology is called eternity. And when you think about it, which is very interesting, this will work with any game, any concept. Doesn't have to be an action RPG, can be first person. As a matter of fact, it'll work even outside of games. It'll work with any kind of app. And so we're looking at this as this is a fundamental different way about thinking about big data and the way that you can augment user experience. And a year from now, when we talk about this podcast, you'll remember like, hey, do you remember, you know, we talked about this and this person asked this question. Or 2 years from now, you know, Beamable has done a bunch of stuff and Apocalypse has done a bunch of stuff and things have come full circle, and we'll be able to talk about, you know, how was the Deadhaus Sonata launch, or how did it all go? All of these things are memories that we will keep and are important to us. And I think that's where the key differentiator comes in of gamers want experiences. Well, people want experiences that have value to them, whether you collect art, whether you're a gamer, whether you do all these different kinds of things. And this is an opportunity for us to bottle that in a way that is beneficial for gamers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I'm going to try to relay back again some of the ideas I think I heard there, but this echoing through eternity is the idea that you can capture things on chain and it can persist well beyond the lifetime
100%.
of the game. Like it'll be there forever.
Yeah,
right. Like,
that's right.
You know, assuming the blockchain that you build on, you know, has traction and stays around, it'll just continue and continue and continue. So
that's right.
I've played all these games in my life. I don't know how many hundreds, probably more than 1,000 games. I don't know how many games I've played. I lost track.
Same.
I probably was hundreds in as a teenager. So
yeah.
But I played all these games. Some of them I remember really well, but even the ones I remember really well, like it's only in my memory. It's morphed over time. I probably re-experience it just the way my own brain has kind of captured that information. But if we capture it on chain, that history does live on in an interesting way. And it seems like that leads to just maybe a potential for a deeper connection that you have with the game, knowing that your actions have this meaningfulness beyond the experience.
It's, if you think about technologies like the photograph, when we take pictures to remember when we go on vacation, these are snapshots of things. You know, people talk about the metaverse and we're talking about things outside the game. There is no reason why this can't change other things outside the game. What we're really doing is essentially bottling memories, which I think are important to gamers. And it's this core concept of we are our history. And if you look at the most modern ways of defining the universe according to quantum mechanics, we're not 3D objects moving through space. That's an old way of thinking about the universe. And when it comes to Einstein and defining the theory of relativity, what he basically said is we are our histories. If you want to define this moment in time, it's all the things that you've done, all the things that I've done, getting these coffees live on the stream. This defines this moment. And when we want to talk about it years from now, it is all of these things. And it's what's important to people. And I think I know if I did something in the game and we did something together, like say we discovered this new area, found a city, and it's like the Dark Tower of John's Dark Tower. And 20 years from now, when the game lives on, people are going to be, who's John? What the hell? What does this mean? Right? And then they'll look at the history and say, oh, that's cool. And these are the kind of things, you know, we look at, and going back to the Lord of the Rings analogy, the whole creation of the Silmarillion was insane just to create this book, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, which I personally really love. But when you have millions of people contributing to it, we then get to fall into the school of thought of like the creation of Shakespearean plays, where a lot of people think it wasn't a single writer. It was the whole troupe continually iterating like a video game development team over time as they went from city to city. And that's how you got these dirty jokes for people in the front rows, the cerebral metaphors in the balconies for people in the balconies. These are the kind of things that we can create. It is like an online way of creating the ultimate experience of storytelling in games, and also a universe. It's beyond storytelling. It's actual memories that people can have that people think are valuable. And you may love the Tower of John and everything. And, you know, that Dark Tower, people may talk about it, may become something really famous in the world. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe someone who's a musician will write a song about it, and that will get captured in on-chain as well. And people can do with that what they want. It's whatever people feel it's worth, that's what they can do. And they don't have to do anything because it's ethical free to play. They don't have to touch it, but it's a memory. And that's the idea.
As you were talking about that, I was remembering some of the work by Werner Vinge.
Oh, yeah.
So Fire Upon the Deep,
Loved it.
Deepness in the Sky.
Yeah.
But the specific thing I was remembering is so first of all, if you haven't read these books, you just have to read these books. This is the guy who coined the singularity long before it became like part of our popular culture and Kurzweil and all that. He was talking about the singularity in fiction. But he had this idea that in the far future, thousands of years from now, we'll have thousands of years of code having been written.
Yeah.
So what archaeologists will be doing in the future is going back
reverse engineering.
Not just reverse engineering, trying to find all the code that was sort of built on top of code, of code over. I mean, we've only really got decades of that now. In the future, it'll be hundreds and then thousands of years. So it seems like a real thing that will happen. He didn't know about blockchain, though. That wasn't an idea he had encountered.
Yeah.
It seems like there could almost be like a blockchain archaeologist who goes and finds John's Tower, and like, what was the origin of that? What was the story behind that?
Yeah, you know, so technology is advancing so rapidly, and you know, I guess I've been doing this for a long time, and I look at technology as tools and different ways of, like, when the PlayStation CD-ROM came in, I was like, I can do voice. I don't have to do text on screen. And I hated reading text on a monitor. I hated it. I was just like, this is terrible. And what can we do to fix this problem? And when I look at the whole idea of, and it really came down to, what can I do? Can I truly do something that is as good as Lord of the Rings? And the answer is no. But could a community of 1 million, could I create an environment where maybe 1 million people could? And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Or maybe it lives on. Another problem with games that people really, as a gamer, seeing your favorite IP go to hell in a handbag because they take a different direction with it, and the gamers hate it, everyone hates it, and someone's like, please rescue this IP. That's another thing that we can do when we're creating these persistent memories. You're creating a huge wealth of information of people that can go into escape in, and eventually possibly even give control back to the gamers to say, you guys can steer the IP 25 years where I'm long retired, hopefully alive still, but we'll never know. We'll see. But it gives people
I'll be living on chain, though.
Yes, right. Maybe we'll be able to
immortality,
duplicate our consciousness and put it on chain. But these kind of things are possibilities. And I think that as creators and entertainers, if we can give something back to the audience where they haven't experienced it before, I think we have to try. And you know, I think there's so much opportunity right now with all these parallel technologies coming together. As like I said, when we first started talking, I didn't set out to say we're going to do this, we're going to do this. We over time started thinking about these ideas, and it, long story, but I'll add a bit more. Before I formed Apocalypse, I had the opportunity of meeting some of the top quantum physicists in the world at something called the Perimeter Institute in Waterloo.
Okay.
And all of these people come in and they talked about space and time. I can send you the link later. There's like, it's an hour video. And
Oscar, we'll post that later as a follow-up.
Yeah, I've got a 2-minute thing. You are your history too. And these kind of things. You
thought you were here for game development today. Now you're here for quantum mechanics.
We're talking about quantum mechanics. We had quantum mechanics and Eternal Darkness too. I love quantum mechanics. And but through creating this video and listening to things over and over again, and particularly that line, you are your history, when we set out to create, we started looking at games like Path of Exile and, you know, what they were doing right, what we thought we can improve upon. I love Path of Exile. It's a great game. And you are your history kept hitting home for us. And we were like, well, what if we turned everything upside down? And what if we got rid of, and to think about, you know, new seasons as quantitative easing, you really have to pull back. You really have to be in the games industry to say, wow, this is really bad. We shouldn't be doing this. And gamers don't understand it at sort of these levels, or if we explain it this way, they can, but they understand what grinding means. And they understand that epic set that they used to have, that used to be the best, now they have to get another one. After the 10th or 11th time, it's really tiring. And so what we're saying to people is, what you do matters, and over time it will become more valuable because they're unique. And that is something what I think is a truly different experience. So
let's broaden it a moment and just talk about game development generally, because unlike a lot of people who have come to Web3, you have a tremendous amount of experience shipping games pre-Web3. Now that said, I was at Wolves Den, which is this cool mansion here. Have you been over to Wolves Den?
No.
Okay, we're going to fix that this week, I think. But so I'm going to do a live stream tomorrow, in fact, from Wolves Den. So it's all Web3 game developers at a mansion out a few miles out of the city. It's clear that a number of the games being shown off there are being made by really capable teams. So this whole thing of like Web3 game developers don't know what they're doing. Like I have to actually catch myself a little bit now, because it used to be that was generally true, I think. And then there were a few people that were doing really interesting things. Like here at Beamable, we work with some really great developers like Wildcard Alliance and Mythical Games and Pog Digital and Coin Games. So these are like really experienced game developers, but I don't think that's been, you know, the common denominator of Web3 game development teams. Often there's like these massive aspirations, and they'll have really cool ideas or things that sound good. But my experience as a game developer is a lot of things sound good when you talk about it, or it's in your head.
That's right.
When you get it on the screen is where the rubber hits the road in this industry.
That's right.
So let's talk about that a little bit. What should game developers who might be thinking about Web3, or maybe not Web3, what are the big lessons of game development? How do you ship a game?
Well, so I think that's a really good question. And you know, shipping a game, the last 10% is the hardest part. And until anyone who's a game developer, until you've shipped the game, I don't consider you really a game developer, because I've shipped now, I think I've done like over 10 original IPs from, you know, concept to ship. And I've worked on, you know, the Atari ST with the membrane keyboard. I did 30,000 lines of assembly code.
My first game that I shipped was Atari ST.
Yeah, isn't it awesome? I had an Atari sweat top on yesterday. People were like, you work at Atari? And I'm like, no, but I used to code on their system. I would say until you ship that first title, you truly have no idea what you're doing. And it's not a knock at, you know, how good you are or anything like that. It is a defining factor that I would say most people can't ship a game. and it's very, very difficult to do so.
It's funny when you say the last 10% thing, though, because when someone tells me they're about 90% done the game, I'm like, so you're might be halfway through.
Yeah, you're
like,
not.
That's
you're
more
not,
like so these percentages.
So 10% more to go, 5 more years it'll be out. It's like, it's really hard unless you're in the final stages of bug testing. So as an example, with Deadhaus Sonata, we have an active Discord. We have, I think, over 100 people under NDA are currently playing.
Yep.
It's live, it's playable. We're getting feedback all the time, but we have a long way to go. Like, we're not even close to the last 10%. We have many, many more things to do in the game.
Are you still kind of discovering? Do you feel like you're discovering the fun still at this stage, or?
Well, yeah. So getting fun, the engagement, but we're also working on, like, we're iterating on interfaces. Does this combat feel good? And do you know Mark Cerny? He's a great dude. He works with Naughty Dog, and he's part of Sony. And
know of him, but I don't.
Okay, so he said to me once, and it was a great story. So he was working on Crash Bandicoot. We were shipping Legacy of Kain, and I had a bet with him that we would sell more copies than he did. I lost that bet, so I bought him dinner. But Legacy of Kain was my first hit, and what he said to me, okay, you're a game developer now that you shipped the title. And I was like, well, it's my 4th game, but yeah, okay. And he said, what matters now is not if you want to be a great game developer, and it was really true, and he's a very smart person. He said, if you can create, it's not that you've created a single hit now, it's now if you can create another hit. He goes, that's what defines the truly good game developers. And when I think that that's really true. And like when we had the opportunity to work with Miyamoto-san and Kojima-san, those guys are just, they know their craft so well. Mark Cerny does as well. And until you have a chance to sort of work with people like that, these are the true innovators in our industry. And I think on all these new technologies that are coming together now, and I'm going to end this on a super positive note, that's what's really going to define the success of all these techs. And our industry right now is going through massive amounts of change. You're seeing incredible amounts of layoffs, failed projects with budgets that are surreal, that are just crashing and burning. But what does that mean? It means there's a tremendous amount of opportunity now for disruption and innovation. So the groups that innovate and disrupt and don't even, when I first started Silicon Knights, I started it at one of the worst times. Apparently there was all kinds of layoffs, and I had no idea. I was just like, I'm making games. This is the best job in the world. I can't believe I'm
great time to start anything though. Like when all the talent comes back.
Yeah. And so the industry is so tough right now, and a lot of people are very hesitant. And I will say this to everyone. This is one of the best opportunities of all time in the video game industry, because the people who have been previously successful, the old ways are no longer working. So you have new opportunities and new ways to talk about, like, I get a chance here to talk, the whole idea of talking on this podcast about quantum mechanics and how we can work it into a video game and capture memories for people and really change the fundamental way of making games. That's amazing to me. Like, it's just like, wow, what an opportunity. There are thousands of opportunities like that for everyone. So when we talk about these new game developers, they're going to look at things from a different perspective. And that's what the industry needs right now, because if you want to go out on the forums, you go out on Steam, you go on anywhere where there's games. I don't want to play this game. It sucks now. It's not like the games that we used to play 20 years ago or 10 years ago. And I think that means people want to see something new. And people will say things like, oh, it's always the same franchise making money. That always happens just before a massive shift. Because I've been here many times. I've seen many console cycles. I've been told that original IP will never sell. When we created Legacy of Kain, people were like, no one cares about vampires, Dennis. And it's not going to sell, and people won't care about story, and it's too dark. And, when we were creating Eternal Darkness, people are like, everyone dies in this game. And, there were so many things. You're always being told you can't do something. The more we're told that we can't do something is the more when I feel personally it's time to lean in. So.
Hey, Oscar, we have a question from the audience. Thank you, by the way, for jumping in, Raul.
No, it's a good question. Raul asks, how do you know when enough is enough and you ship a game now and not delay anymore, and know when to save other features and new content for a later DLC or update?
That's a great
Thanks,
question.
Raul.
So great. The answer is it's never enough. And what we're looking at, it's just not. You're never happy. You're never finished. So you have to, when we did things like ship Eternal Darkness, when you couldn't even patch the game back then because it was all on CD-ROM and that was it, right? You were done. And those days were much easier than they are today with patches and DLC. So with Deadhaus Sonata, the idea is when we launch and we have like a 1.0, we then have a 10-year story arc where we iterate with the community and it never ends. We're always working for the gamers. So I guess this is a commitment like marriage to this game and the histories and giving people this universe which they can contribute to, and possibly metaverse outside of the game what they can also contribute to and write stories and do whatever. We, as an example, with Deadhaus Sonata, if you go to our YouTube channel, you can go to YouTube at, Deadhaus Sonata. We have over 10 hours of radio plays right now, traditional radio plays inspired by the 1930s that give you a background of the story. That's not the main arc of the game, which is going to be another 10 years. And so we plan on doing this for a super long time. And the idea is that as long as people want to listen to it and they want to digest the game, we'll keep making it. So.
And we got a comment here from Dan. Love the wisdom. Thank you, Dennis. Of course, Dan. Thank you for joining and being here part of the live audience today. We've got 565 people in the audience right now. Not a whole lot of GDC talks that get 565 people in the audience. So
that's awesome.
You're one of the biggest talks at GDC this year. So congrats on that. And by the time this circulates, I won't be surprised if this is one of our most popular. So you said a couple of interesting things there that I want to unpack a little bit more. We talked about shipping the game, and you also talked about having your community. It's not a huge community, but you've got like your 100, are you calling them alpha testers?
Oh, they're focus testers. No, the Discord's much bigger, but these are all people who have signed NDAs and who are interested in giving us feedback at a super early stage. So they're saying, this combat attack sucks. We don't like the interface. Can you change this? And so these are people who are very invested in the game, want to see it succeed. And we're just working with them. And it's been going on now for about, I would say 6 months. And we will expect to continue and grow this community that are playing the game even larger. The Discord's totally open. Anyone can join their Discord. So, but to get on there, you have to sort of get a supporter pack and sign an NDA. And then
Here's the thing I love about that, though. I think far too many game developers wait way too late into their development process to start hearing what people actually think of the idea. I think there's often this belief that everything's going to kind of come together towards the end, and only then can you show it to players and get useful feedback. I'll share just sort of my own sort of experience with that. So I built a game called Star Trek Timelines years back, still running online. You can play it on mobile. So first of all, the first year that we built this game, we tried 5 completely different games. So we knew what we wanted to do with Star Trek. We had this vision, which is Star Trek isn't really about like the fighting aspect. Yes, there's starship battles in Star Trek, but that's actually a very small percentage of like what happens in Star Trek. In contrast to Star Wars, which is really about the combat. Basically, if you can do good lightsaber combat or good starship combat, you have a Star Wars game that can work.
Yep.
Star Trek's trickier than that. For the most part, if you want to capture Gene Roddenberry's vision, which is this optimistic, future space civilization with a lot of philosophy and ethics and all that stuff that he wanted to pack into it. So it turns out that's a really hard game to build, to capture that and not have a lot of combat along the way. So we had to try. Oh, thanks, Oscar, for showing off some of the screens of Star Trek Timelines.
That looks awesome.
So we had to, and there we show some of the combat, but of course the combat does sell in a trailer.
100%.
But the gameplay is actually not particularly focused on the combat scenes. It was based on the storytelling and choosing characters and kind of this fantasy of like create your dream team of characters from all Star Trek history and have them go to missions. But it was hard, and we had to do pretty different game designs along the way. And we spent maybe a max of a couple of months on each idea. And for the first 4 of them, pretty much scrapped the idea, maybe learned a couple of interesting things that we would use in the future, but in a completely different format.
Yeah.
But the point is, we played the game, we showed it to people. We really wanted to capture the essence of Star Trek within this before we started investing the next 18 to 24 months of our lives building this game based on maybe the wrong idea.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the other thing that we did is, so once we figured out which game we wanted to build, we spent about a year. We brought it to Penny Arcade Expo,
Nice.
and we had a big exhibit where we brought people in and they could try it kind of was more of like an alpha version of the game at that point in time. And I think day 1 of PAX, we had 1,000 people come through, play the game.
Yeah.
But what we were actually doing was capturing data on what people liked. We were doing exit interviews with the players.
Yeah.
We were capturing actual data on like how deep in, where did they abandon the process?
Yeah.
We actually had our development team on standby to use some of that feedback and ship a different build by the second day of PAX.
Amazing.
And then we compared that, and we learned a lot of things about like what was going to be engaging in that initial player experience.
Yeah.
The whole point of this long story is that keeping the idea super precious, I don't think is what really wins in game development. It's not, you're shaking your head, so I'm thinking you don't either.
Yeah.
Getting audience feedback and then having the machine in place that lets you act upon that feedback. Like, also there's game companies that get feedback, they don't really do anything with it. Like, so it's those 2 things: engaging with the audience, learning what they love, learning how to improve it for them, but also iterating, bringing it in. So right with that.
No, I couldn't agree more. And as I talked earlier in this podcast, we work for gamers. If you cannot engage your audience, you are 100% dead. And early in the days when we were even working on Eternal Darkness, I used to post on the IGN forums, and I would have thousands of posts talking about where I thought the game was going, and we'd interact with the audiences. And that was a much slower form of interaction that we now have today, where we have a Discord. Like, we'll have people playing the build in the Discord. We will jump on and we'll talk to them as they're playing. And it's literally a live focus test for us. And they'll be like, we like this.
That's what we thought of our
It's amazing.
thing at PAX. It's a live focus test.
And that is in my opinion, that's one of the few ways to succeed in this. There's a million ways to fail. It is so easy to fail. And I think if you sort of keep in your mind this sort of golden compass rule of you work for the gamer, if you ever start fighting with your audience, or you're saying that the audience is saying this and you're saying, no, this is the right way, you're in big trouble, I think. I think we have to work for gamers. We have to find out what they want. This was something that Miyamoto-san taught me when we first started working with Nintendo and we're working on Eternal Darkness. They invested in Silicon Knights back then. And he said, Dennis, just always remember to work for gamers. And even with, so here's a really cool story. We're creating this insanity effects for Eternal Darkness. And we're talking about the delete save game, like sanity effect. And we pretend we're deleting your save game. And back then, everybody, it wasn't automatic saves to the disk. We have this little cartridge that was very short. And if you lost that, you lost your entire game, all your progress. And Miyamoto-san said to me, we work for gamers. What if they take their GameCube and they throw it against the wall and break it? We're responsible for that. Do we have to buy them another GameCube? And I had never thought of that. And I was like, whoa, that's a really good point. Because if you're going to have this sort of mythos of, you know, we work for gamers, how do we solve this problem? And my answer was just a straight, honest answer. I said, Miyamoto-san, I don't know what I would do under that circumstance, but I know this: if I was a gamer and that happened, I would remember that moment for the rest of my life. And he sat back and he went, that is true. I said, okay, let's do it. And they approved everything. They're just like, just do whatever you want. It's a really neat idea. We don't know where it's going to go. But again, it comes back to those memories, those ideas of What do you remember? What do you get from gaming? Is entertainment. So how can we entertain you? And these are the kind of things that I think these technologies that we talk about, whether it's blockchain, whether it's artificial intelligence stacks, whether it's big data, who knows, maybe quantum entanglement's going to come in a couple of years. And, we're doing all kinds of crazy things with clouds and all this kind of stuff. At the end of the day, how do we allow gamers to escape and have this experience where they can forget about the real world and escape and enjoy what we've, a platform that we've created for them.
Okay. So we work for the players, the gamers.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of this theme within Web3 game development for the last couple of years where a lot of people will just be like, well, just build a fun game. It's sort of like the feedback. It's like, oh shit, I didn't think of that. Didn't think of that.
So easy.
Crap. But here's what I think people are maybe getting at with that comment. It's a very like superficial comment.
Yeah.
I think they're commenting on the large number of Web3 game studios that have prioritized traders and the economy participants.
Yes, that's right.
Which have their role, but they prioritized it higher than the fundamental fun that's coming out, the fun that's coming out of the game.
That's what I would call a perspective bias. And you need to understand, so this new technology called blockchain comes out, and it's distributed ownership, which is really cool. It's fundamental. I am a huge believer of decentralized control. I think it's fantastic. However, when it comes to creating games, the games industry now has been around long enough where we're talking about engagement theory and flow and deep psychological analysis of what people want. And I would actually say, if someone says make a fun game, I would say no, make an engaging game. You want to engage people. And whether they have fun or they're angry, it's those memories that count, good or bad. That's what they care about. And so that, if you look at World of Warcraft and people making money off of farming items and stuff, that's a secondary economy to 90% of the people who are playing to have fun. So, and I think when it comes to a lot of the Web3, they looked at Web3 as the leading technology. It's not. It is another technology that is a tool in our toolbox that will help us make great games. And I actually feel, and I was at a talk the other day where I'm forgetting his name, I'm so sorry. The person who founded EVE Online in that group, he was saying we need Hilmar. Yep. Let's stop talking about Web3 games and just start calling them games. I agree. Like for me, Web3 is just another tool in the toolbox, and gamers don't care what engine I'm using. Gamers don't care what's the latest graphic card, or am I using Open 3D, or all these kind of things. Are we running Linux or Windows? No one cares. They just care about the game. And that's the way we should think about it. And I think this bias of, when Web3 first started creating, everyone's like, oh, look at these cool economies that we can do. Yes, but that shouldn't lead, that should follow. We should create an engaging and immersive experience the gamers want to play. And if it's got these other additional things like, look, you can actually own things and you can do things if you want to, just in a way that gamers appreciate and feel empowered, not in a way that they feel trapped or some kind of pyramid scheme or anything like that. Those are the things to avoid. And it's like a hammer. You can put nails in a board, or you can do very bad things with hammers. So we have to we're responsible for that in the things that we create. And that's how I think we need to approach them.
Wow, what a great point to end on. So we've gone through an hour here. I feel like we could probably talk for 3 or 4 hours.
That's awesome.
We'll eventually get hoarse. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This is the biggest live stream we've had in terms of live audience so far. So there's over 600 of you watching. I really suspect this is going to get a lot of circulation online. Cool. So great for you, Dennis. I hope that this brings you a whole bunch of new fans for what you're working on.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Well, check us out, deadhaussonata.com. We're, for those people who are interested in participating, we are doing a Series A right now. So we're doing a capital raise in a great opportunistic time. So, check us out, hit us up. We'd love to talk to you. And I think we could talk about this for 3 more hours.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
This has been awesome.
Dennis. And I'll be at Wolves Den tomorrow. So for those of you in the Web3 audience, you know all about Wolves Den. I'll be there doing a live stream. Tomorrow morning, it will be with David Chartrand. He's a CEO of a company called Squiddo, which is building a really cool VR game. So he's going to talk about his virtual reality experiences building his product, very successful, very beloved product in the App Store called Digigods. And then I'll also be live streaming after that with Sam Stefanina. And we're going to be talking all about the experience of what's been going on at Wolves Den this week. And Dennis, if you're free, stop by, participate in that as well. But this has been really fun. This is the kind of conversations I love to bring you on this channel. We do this every single week on Web3. We also have one that's a non-Web3 kind of traditional game development talk that we do every week. And that's on Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. 3 is always at 9 a.m. Eastern. So until tomorrow, when I return with the VR conversation with David, enjoy and check out all the new generation of games that are now being made in Web3, because there are really tremendously talented teams behind it with real game development experience like Dennis. And I hope you'll check out his game and support it and share a word of it. So until then, thanks everybody.